So hello and good morning everybody, and welcome to this session from Let's Grow Flax, which explores connections and inspirations to growing flax from several of our members, which are inspired through the cultural heritage or the knowledge of the culture, and they are very, very lucky that they will be here to talk about the inspirations and present a couple of images and resources. So this session brings together the culture of, or cultural references of 4 different nationalities. So I'm from Bavaria, and we also have Gill, which talk about their Irish ancestry. And I briefly will talk about Mirela's background. And of course, we also have Galina, which will talk about her Russian connections and information and background. So to start with, if we have any guests here today, which are not familiar with our project, I'm just going to share briefly a little bit of information about that. Okay, can everybody see the slides?
Yes, you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for letting me know. So hello. So I'm Brigitte from Let's Grow Flax, and I've been guiding a group of flax growers for a couple of years now. We are a group of 1 square meter growers, as in everybody grows a square meter in their garden or allotment or teaching garden. And we are on letsgrowflax.org. That's our website, and also on Instagram if you want to know a little bit more about us. The group consists of about 30 people. We're along the Hampshire-Surrey border, and everybody is growing in spaces they have available, even in pots and grow bags and so forth. And it's just a fantastic collaboration, which actually over 2 years, 2023 was the growing year and 2024 was the year of the production of the genes. So as a portfolio piece, we have created a pair of genes, and we had a very good yield. We're taking notes and people are filling in diaries, and from that we know that actually, even though most of the people were first-time growers, we have actually matched the yield of commercial growers. We benchmarked this with Simon from Flax Yields, who's also publishing his yields on his website. So a fantastic success for first-time growers. And a word to say about the genes is we just wanted to explore what's possible, but we don't expect anybody to grow genes or their own dowry or their own kind of linen cloth. But if in future many of us could grow their own mending patch for existing genes to prolong the life of their clothes, that would be already a fantastic contribution to going in a sustainable way about textiles. And that's what we're hoping for 25 and 26. Right, and I'm going to start with Mirela. Mirela is traveling at the moment. She is in Slovenia at the moment, so I am presenting on her behalf. Mirela has kindly already talked through previous presentations and actively contributed to Facebook about her family heritage. And she was very, very happy to be actively part now of that flax heritage. And here we have her hand-woven bookmark, which she created from her own homegrown hand-spun flax, and it is presented on linens she has inherited from her grandmother. Also, I think it's a cushion cover which we explored, and we think it is dyed with onion skin. So these are kind of the linens she inherited, and that's the heritage she wanted to step into. And again, you can see it's quite textured material, but it's perfectly good for the purpose. So we're not growing for the finest French linen yet, but the linen we grow has good purpose and good functionality, and is a good sustainable contribution to our textile practice. Mirela has also inherited a spindle, which she thinks comes from Bulgaria, and a spinning wheel, which comes from the Bosnian part of her family heritage. So she still thinks Mirela has spun on the spindle, and she's taken to this of spinning like a fish to water. It was really lovely to see that development and that growth of her flax knowledge and flax processing skills to get it into linen yarn. And this one is an exploration for the future. We'll see what can be done about the spinning wheel. It's very, very different to the spinning wheels we worked on. So that's a project that's in progress, and we need to carry on working. Mirela was also very active on Facebook. For those of us which are part of our Facebook group, scroll down to see a picture she added from Croatian women she found in her archive somehow, which spun late at night, and they didn't use a stick or for this stuff spinning. They simply put the flax on her heads, which is humorous and interesting at the same time, but bittersweet as well, because you can see, like many Irish women, they spun through the mouth, which fulfilled the purpose of spinning flax wet, which is what we do. But these days we have a little bit of water on the side and use our hands, because running it through your mouth can create injuries and ulcers. And the big Irish lip is maybe something we're going to hear about a little bit more later when Gill is presenting. Mirela is also very, very active. We're still creating connections to the Croatian community. She's connected to a Croatian online school and has created an online video about the flax processing and the work she is doing, and has been presented both in an online video which she shared with that school, and she has been featured in a Croatian newsletter as a result. So it's fantastic to see the ripples we are creating as a group, and Mirela is creating as part of her Croatian school. And also, and I'm just quickly admitting somebody, so reaching out in the Croatian community. And I know also she has published in her newsletter about the allotment. So point of us is to do the work, and part of it is, of course, to create this ripple and share the knowledge, which is what we're doing today. Mirela also has talked about, I think, a Slovenian song or Croatian song about celebrating the creation of flax. And unfortunately, my bandwidth is not good enough to play the video, but there will be a recording, so you can revisit the slide, or if you know how to do a screenshot, you simply need to click the print screen button on your keyboard, and then you can take a screenshot of this slide and maybe watch the video a little bit later that features a Croatian song about the folklore craft and stories about flax processing in Croatia. Right, okay. Mirela, very quickly, I can see you. If you can give me a nod, was that okay how I have shown your work?
Yes, it was perfect. I really enjoyed listening. Yes, you put it together very well. It's just my connection here is just going up and down, but I can still follow. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great. Good to hear. I'm glad she's happy with the presentation. Fantastic. Okay. And with that, I move on to just very quickly explaining that for those of you who listen to the talk Christiane from Bertha's Flax and 1 square meter line in Austria kindly gave for us, she mentioned that she herself actually grew up in a very rich area of Austria and only came to explore the local flax heritage and traditions in the area she came to live now, where she lives with her husband. And it's similar to me. I actually grew up in an area in Lower Bavaria, which is called the grain chamber of Bavaria. So it was very fertile, close to the Danube. It was flooded regularly with the slush of the Danube, very, very fertile. So I don't personally have family where I grew up, flax connections, but I looked it up, and not far away from where I live, we're on the border to the Bavarian forest, where the forest farmers start. When I found this book about the Bavarian forest, this is translated, means the forest is my home. And this Bavarian farmer's wife talks about her experience in growing flax. And she actually states, it took a long time to transform into, this is my translation, it's a German book. It took a long time to transform flax into linen, she remembers. But it was one of the most beautiful tasks in the rural year. The men would sow the seeds, and the rest was woman's work. a beautiful linen chest was the pride of every woman. And that relates to the stories also Christiania was talking about, Bertha's flax and the dowry treasure chest she's now collecting. This is in the vicinity of maybe 20 miles away from where I grew up. Very, very pleased this is my area as well. And in the living room of my paternal grandmother, there is indeed a spinning wheel, a flax spinning wheel that's now used for decoration, a remainder of that. But my parents, in living memory, don't have flax connections. But yeah, but it's not far away from where I grew up. This is actually now the end of my part of the presentation, so I stop sharing. And I think now the recording goes back to everybody on screen, and I am handing over now to Galina for her part of the presentation. Galina has been with us since 2023. She has attended most of our workshops. She has also brought her daughter along, and it was, again, that's another way of sharing the knowledge with a different generation and making ripples and passing this on. We're really, really pleased to welcome Galina to present her connections about her Russian inspirations to growing and connecting to flax.
Hello, everybody. Oh, wonderful. That's the first step. Right. Okay, well, mine probably will be a little bit more technical than too much of a personal experience with flax. It started like in Christiana's talk. He was talking about her flax journey started with when they bought a property. My journey also started when we bought a property in Russia, in this Smolensk region, which turned out to be a flax growing region when we started to research the history about this. And my husband actually from this region, and he remembers that being a schoolboy, they were quite often called to help with the pulling of the flax. That was part of their, duties that they had to perform. So unfortunately, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, all of this flax industry also collapsed. So I have a couple of pictures here. This is me on one of the flax fields in the region, which they've started now, after 20 years of being in the collapse state, the industry started to go back. So lots of fields been now sown with flax again. So this is one of the fields. And these are ruins of the former flax processing plants, just next door to where our property is. And there are a couple of other pictures as well. You can see here is the former weighbridge where the trucks with the flax would go in through the gate, and this will be the office where it all will be weighed, recorded, etc. And then here in this picture, there is just this note is quite. I just found it funny. Supervisors show employees how to work safely. So this is basically remains of what used to be a huge industry in that region. Pretty much every small town had a flax processing plant, so that they are close to the fields which were growing flax. But unfortunately, at the moment, it's in this stage, but it gradually started to come back. And I wanted just to say a little bit of the history, how it's all started. This man called Alexander Engelhardt, he was a professor of chemistry in St. Petersburg. And in 1870s, you probably, quite a few of you are aware of the Russian Revolution, which happened in 1917. But before that, there was several years of turbulence, especially students were involved in this. And he was one of those people who supported students in their anti-monarchist tendencies. So he was expelled from his job, and he was exiled. So he was not allowed to live in St. Petersburg. And he went to live in Smolensk region, and he basically had to survive. And he started to explore what is possible, what normal people like peasants essentially, what they grow in. And obviously rye was the main culture, and flax they were also growing for needs, for their domestic needs, for clothes and for bed sheets, this type of things. But nobody thought that flax can be profitable. Because he was chemistry professor, he applied scientific approach to this. And because he was kind person, obviously, you know, with students, he was supported the students. He actually make an effort to understand why local peasant people, why they think it's not successful. So he kind of made the connection between two things. And he basically, his notes are very interesting to read, because it has, I wouldn't talk much about this, but it's all about you know, how he describes the life of real people in 1870 in Russia, because it largely was unknown to everybody, because these people couldn't write themselves, they wouldn't read. So it was like an area of culture which nobody actually knew. So he said that actually the common belief of these people was that if you apply any agronomy skills, you will be bankrupt eventually. So nobody believed in scientific knowledge. And they all said that it's God's will, God's will. So if, for example, there is some pest attacked the flax or rye, whatever, it's God's will. Nobody wanted to do anything scientific to get better results. And in 10 years' time, he's actually managed to turn this around. So he basically, you know, this crop rotation, he experimented, and he said that after flax, rye has amazing results. And then if you sow clover and grass for next 4 years, then you will be able to return to flax after that with the good productivity. And also, obviously, manure was used as fertilizer, but manure is very uneconomical to produce, because you need to invest into cattle first and then feed the cows, for example. So he's actually found that use of phosphate rock, which was in abundance in the area, is a good replacement for manure and much cheaper. So in 10 years, he actually was able to persuade the local villages who lived in the nearby city, and this is the beginning of the industry, which we then see in the Soviet Union. So he was basically the pioneer of the whole region to show how the flax can be grown profitably with the good yields, with the good quality, you know, right for purpose. And he was also ethical in what he does. So he was quite aware that this mostly was women's job. You know, like Mirela said, after sewing is done, everything else is women's job. And he had to do something to attract women to him. And actually, it's an interesting fact that all the money that women earned, they were considered their own. The man, the husband in the family, didn't have right to the money that women earned, but they only could earn it at certain times of the year, because they had to work for the family, for the husband, essentially, and only outside of this they can work for themselves. And basically, by, you know, because he understood all this cultural expectations, he was able then to attract women to do the job very quickly and pay them good money, because they were able to do a quick job. So he was allowed, you know, he could pay them more because he needed less hours. And because of that, women then would have their own money, even young girls as young as 7 years old. They were doing their bit of processing and earning a little bit of money. And with this money, they were able then to go and buy, you know, scarves for themselves. Women started to buy, you know, dresses and, you know, some other clothes. And that expanded trade as well, because in this region people started to bring more things that women would be interested in. So if you think how one man's efforts then transformed the whole region, and especially women's life, I think it's just it was very interesting for me to read and understand. So my next slide, I hope I will be able to move to it. Sorry, here. Right. So there are a couple of facts about sewing, sewing rituals. I talked about superstitions and beliefs. One of the beliefs was that the flax kind of able to think in the same way as people think. And so sewing of the flax quite often was done completely naked, to persuade to show the flax that we don't have any clothes to wear, and the flax will be then kind and grow taller and good quality. So then after that, more clothes can be done out of this. And in the same sort of thing that girls would get their hair down, because usually in Russia it wasn't acceptable for girls and for women to have their hair not covered. But for the flax sewing purposes, it was done so that the flax would grow then long, silky, smooth, and shiny. And also, there were common beliefs about protective qualities of flax seeds. So they were added to the bags, to the shoes, apparently to the pockets, just so that evil spirits avoided the person carrying these seeds. And this is my last slide. Some photographs of the tools, which are similar to what we are using, but slightly different. The breaker, just slightly different. You can see it's made out of one log with the wedge cut out of this. And this is actually a scatter. So scatter works in the same way as a breaker. And this bit, it is from the bog, from the swamp, essentially. In the swamp, you have like these groves of the earth. It was then cut, and this one is become like sanding paper. So this is how scattering was done. And for hackling, we are using metal like brushes, but this one made of I don't know, bristles of some sort, and it was done holding the flax and then brushing it like this. So I just thought I will share this because it could be, it's just slight variations of the tools that we are using. That's it from me.
Thank you very much, Galina. You are exactly on 10 minutes. You're an amazing timekeeper. That's brilliant. Yes. Thank you very much. Great. Okay. Galina, thank you so much. That was an amazing amount of information. I really, really loved that you got to explore the area where you moved to and engaged with where you bought the property in such an interesting way through textiles. I love to hear that flax pulling, like Mirela, is still in your family's memory. She remembered how her dad or the women in his vicinity pulled the flax. And it's also interesting to hear how very much flax was intertwined with the larger industries. And beautiful, beautiful to hear how the scientific work, I've now forgotten the name. I'm so sorry. What was it, Professor?
Engelhardt.
Engelhardt, thank you very much. How Professor Engelhardt not only managed to revive flax growing in the area, but in that process capture the lived experiences of the people and put them on the map And this is something similar we heard to Christiane, that textiles and the making, the empowering of females very, very often happens to textile stories and textile histories. That was so interesting to hear that there are similarities with that, how textiles really, really creates a parallel strand and very important strand of history in regards to gender, empowerment, money flows and position in society. Thank you very much for talking a little bit about that. Also very technical in terms of flax rotation. I'm being asked about this very, very often. At the moment, I think the current advice is that you can grow flax in the same patch for about 3 years before you need to rotate it. That animal manure is absolutely not advisable as a fertilizer in between, exactly the same thing. So a lot of knowledge that you've mentioned has now become common knowledge. Flax growing industry, which is amazing. So I've taken so many notes. Yes, so it was really interesting to hear, and I will bug you about more questions later on. And I also loved the folklore about the bodily connection to flax, showing the flax. Look, this is my hair. Can you do the same hair? Look, this is my body. Give me something for my body. Also the fact that it has made it into folklore is an important aspect of storytelling, and how it's done it is just really very lovely and very gentle, and keeps flax close to our bodies. And of course, linen was the preferred material for medical purposes in terms of bandages, underclothing, shifts being on the body through its fantastic on-skin qualities, being antimicrobial, antibacterial, hypoallergenic, and all of this. So in all folklore, there's always a bit of a grain of truth. Of course, the Egyptians have used linen as the preferred on-skin material for a long time because they intuitively knew about this. So all these stories come from so many angles and tell very similar stories, and it was lovely to hear about your angle. Thank you so much, Galina. From my stories, I heard that part of the flax work was actually a nice interruption to the rural work. Professor Engelhardt empowered women to do the flax work for some independence. Have you found anything how women actually took to it? Did they actually pick it up and see it as a chance of empowerment, or was it just an additional labor they had to do? Did you have any?
No, actually, he did mention that actually women, he said, are more, they are savers. So because they need to save for their daughters, they need to save for themselves, they need to keep the money. So he said it was much easier to employ women than men, because they inherently knew that they are doing it for some sort of purpose.
Right.
And once he understood how to get them in, it was very easy. He said it just then flourished because he knew where to get people, how to entice them, how to get them interested to do the job.
Oh, fantastic. That's good to hear. Thank you. That was a really, really nice follow-up on your presentation. And we have a question and answer session after all presentations. So with that, I'm going to hand over Galina. I'll be very rude and mute you now. And I'm going over to Gill and make Gill host. And I really look forward to hearing more about Gill's heritage into Irish ancestry, also professional history, because I believe they've been professionally working as linen workers and linen bleachers.
Do I share my screen now?
Yes, Gill, you're on.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yes, everybody can hear you. I saw the thumbs up.
Well, look, thank you, Bridget, for asking me to do this presentation. And I hope that it will provide a brief overview of what my ancestors were doing, which principally was working in the bleaching of linen, and that this will provide a sort of story of flax to linen in Ireland in general. The Quakers were influential in the production and distribution of linen, but when my story started, we didn't know that at the time, and it was a journey of discovery, and our starting point was this. This is a family tree that hung in my parents' house, and this is my father's grandmother. And when I asked him what his family did in Ireland, he said something to do with linen. And at that time, we knew almost next to nothing about what they were doing, and indeed about the linen industry. And we were intrigued by this picture at the top of the family tree, the house. You can see it in bigger detail here, and these white lines in front of it. And we didn't know what that was at the time. We also had a number of Victorian photo albums. There were a few names in the albums, but not many. So we didn't really know who these people were, other than my great-grandmother and her two sisters. And we assumed this was her father. His name was Thomas Horton. But this hadn't become clear at this point, exactly who was who and what they did. We also had a watercolour painting of the house done by my great-grandmother. And it's quite interesting because this is around about 1880, she must have done this, because it's got the two conservatories on the side. There's a Georgian one on the left-hand side and a Victorian one on the right-hand side. We decided to make a trip to Ireland in 2004 so that we could discover more about the family. And in order to prepare for this trip, we contacted the information office in Banbridge. And Banbridge, which is here, if I can find my cursor, turned out to be the heart of the linen industry in Northern Ireland. We were put in contact to a local historian who said, well, I know quite a bit about your family, and if you like, I'll put together a package and send you some information prior to your trip. He also said that he knew the owner of the house was called Bamford House, and that he could arrange a visit around the house if we would like. Well, of course, we said yes, and we received the package from this historian genealogist in Banbridge, and the first thing that we discovered was this photograph, which is indeed the Horton family sitting on the steps in front of the house at the top of the family tree. Now, this is my 3 times great-grandfather. This is my 2 times great-grandfather and the father of my great-grandmother, Caroline. So this is my father's great-grandfather, and you get lost in who's who at this point, but I'll try and keep on track. And these are his children, who mainly were involved in the linen industry, as we discovered, in Ireland. Also in the package was a copy of the Burke's Irish Family Records. This was a record of the principal Quaker families in Ireland, including ours, the Horton family. And we didn't really know this existed until we received this package. So it was quite exciting at this point. And the story of the family in Ireland started in 1690, where they joined a Quaker community in the south of Ireland, Ballator. And then Benjamin, this 3 times great-grandfather, came up to the north of Ireland to join his uncle in the flax trade, growing flax, and later getting into bleaching. We started to put together the family tree. These families are quite extensive, and so we've been on quite a journey of discovery at this point. Also in the package was this illustration of Bamford House. It comes from a book which was a record of the sort of houses of interest in Northern Ireland, the sort of historical monuments and buildings which were deemed noteworthy for architectural, social, historical and cultural interest. We made 2 trips actually to Ireland, and in the first one we went down to discover the Quaker community in southern Ireland, in Ballator, and then we came back up to Northern Ireland to find this house. And in fact, it had been arranged that we have a tour around the house. which was absolutely fascinating. And we met the then owner, and he allowed us to wander around the grounds. And we then realised that we obviously discovered at this point that they were working in the bleaching industry, and these were the grounds of where the white lines were at the top of the family tree. We discovered the remnants of the bleach works, which were in ruins, and at that time there were plans to redevelop the site, I think trying to keep some of the integrity of the original buildings, but I don't know whether that has happened by now, but that was the plan. And of course we had to take the obligatory photograph of the family on the steps in front of the house. And you can see that the kids were a lot younger then. So this is 2004 we made that visit. We've continued to learn about the family, and I have to say, at this point in time, the information in this report is as to what I found, but it may be superseded by more up-to-date research. So it is ever-changing. While we were in Ireland, we collected a number of books which helped us to better understand the linen industry. We didn't know terms such as scutching, retting, hackling, or even the difference between brown linen and bleached linen, but we were soon to learn about that. A brief word about the roots of the linen trade. Records of the use of linen cloth in Ireland go back to written records in the 11th century, but the production of linen was principally cottage industry of flax grown on farms and in small holdings, and all processed by hand. It was previously thought that the roots of the Irish linen industry were due to the French Huguenots settling in the Lisbon area in 1698, bringing with them new weaving techniques and equipment. The Huguenots were French Protestants who were fleeing persecution when the practice of Protestantism in France was declared illegal. Louis Crommelin has been attributed as being the greatest influence over the development of the Irish linen industry, and he was purported to have established a colony of some 500 Huguenot families in Lisbon. When they left France, they went to Holland, Belgium. They settled in London with a variety of trades, and then this colony in Lisbon in Northern Ireland. Even recently, I've discovered new research which shows that the scrutiny of the Lisbon parish records and the records archived by the Society of Friends, which is what the Quakers were called, established that the Quakers were in Lisbon and Lurgan area since 1640s. And you can see on this stamp, this was a celebration or a stamp commemorating the 350th anniversary of the first Quaker meeting house in Ireland, which was in Lisbon, and that was in 1654. The Louis Crommelin was purported to have brought over equipment which included a hand-driven spinning wheel, but a Quaker linen draper from Lurgan, Thomas Turner, received a grant in 1662 to contrive an engine for dressing hemp and flax, and he published for the Linen Board new methods of improving flax and flaxseed and bleaching cloth. He is also recognised as the inventor of an improved foot pedal spinning wheel. The immediate cause of expansion of the industry was the abolition of import duties by the British government in 1696 on plain Irish linens entering England. And the cheaper Irish linens drove the German and the Dutch out of the English market. That, together with the Irish wool trade being severely restricted by the government tariffs on exports to England, with the introduction of the Wool Act in 1698, which was to protect the English wool industry, the demand for linen increased. This is a picture of Tullylish, where the Bamford House is, and this find my cursor. This is Tullylish Church, and actually this is where my great-grandmother got married. This was the Church of Ireland, which was a Protestant church, and the Quakers typically married Quakers, and if you married outside of the Quaker faith, you had to leave the faith. So at some point after the marriage, my great-grandmother went with her husband back to the Liverpool area where he had family. We haven't quite tracked down how they met, but it could have been through the trade, the exports to America, as a lot of that was going out of Liverpool at the time. Also in this picture you see the Bamford Bleach Works. We discovered that the family owned this, and my 3 times great-grandfather bought the business in 1815. And it was established to a certain point, but it was powered by water wheels. And I'll talk more about that a bit later on. So this is the Bamford Bleach Works. This is the linen bleaching on the bleaching greens. And the linen in the distance is the bottom part of the grounds to Bamford House. So you get a good idea of the size of the business. And the Quakers were well-known philanthropists, and in their business practice, they set up villages for the workers of the people that worked in the mills and in the various business areas. And these are the cottages here where they lived, here and here. One of the famous Quaker families, the Richardsons, ran the Bestbrook mill, and they were the first family to set up a purpose-designed village for the workers in the mill. And they provided not only the housing, but education and medical provision, and also sort of health and welfare. They provided daily outings at the weekend, sports days, and there is documentation online if you wish to access that. So that's the Bestbrook Mill in just outside Lisbon. It's worth just saying at this point that the terrain around the River Bann, the river is here. This is known as the Bann Valley. And the River Bann was ideal because the waters were clear and suitable for bleaching. The fields were wide and flat and extended down to the river's edge. Further upstream near Guildford, the waters were not so good, and bleaching did not take place because the waters were stained brown due to the seepage from the peat bogs at Moyallen. So this was an ideal area to set up a bleaching business.
We are at just over 20 minutes.
Okay. Oh, what's happened? Another picture of the bleach works, and this is the linen bleaching on the grass. These were known as lint fields. And just a note here, this is a little watchtower. The linen was a very valuable commodity and was prone to theft. And the penalty for theft of linen was in fact the death penalty until 1801, when the Quakers managed to get the law changed. and anybody found guilty was then deported. More pictures of linen bleaching in front of the house. What I wanted to just illustrate now was these photographs are from round about 1910, and I'm just going to run through the difference between the farm cottage industry and what later became the mechanisation of a huge production of flax. So here they're sowing the flax. Interestingly, the flax seed were either grown locally or imported from abroad, either from Europe or from Russia and from America. It was more expensive to import the seeds, so they did try to ensure that the seed was gathered and could be provided for further cultivation. Here they're pulling the flax and hard on the hands, back-breaking job, and it is all done by men at this point. And again here they're rippling the flax. The retting was done by a wet water retting method, and these were in ponds or dams of still water, and these were known as lint holes, and that was a messy job, also done by the men. And again, after the retting, they bundled the flax together and they were drained in stooks on the banks of the lint hole. They were then spread out on the grass in what were known locally as spread fields to allow them to dry in the sun and the wind. It also helped separate the fibres from other parts of the plant. This is an example of an iron frame flax breaker. And in the early days, the preparation of yarn was done by hand, again by the men. Later it was mechanised and powered by water wheel. Here's a picture of the women scutching by hand, and in the background you can see a lady spinning the flax off the distaff. Here again hackling by hand, and later this is an example of a hackling machine. This photograph was taken in 1910. The separate lengths of the fibre were combed into one continuous ribbon known as a sliver, and it was done on a spreader which was attached to the hackling machine. This, in the early days, was steam-driven, but later on these machines were powered by, it was driven by water power, water wheels. Later on, they were steam-powered. This is a hand loom weaver. The photograph is about 1910. The pockets survived, but the skills usually died with the individual weaver. And as linen production grew, the need for mechanisation developed. This is a picture of the power loom weaving in 1900s. Before 1850, just to give you a quick idea, there were 58 power looms in Ireland. There were 1,000 in England at the time, and they were weaving coarse linen. Power looms were adapted in the 1850s to weave fine linens, and by the 1870s there were some 15,000 in Ireland. By 1910, the figure had reached 35,000 power-driven looms. This is an example of the linen bleaching, and they introduced chemical bleaching at this point, principally chlorine, into the process. One of the important aspects of the whole process is the finishing rooms, and this was known as bluing and calendaring room. And this was the finishing of the cloth before the beetling, and I'm going to show you a picture of that. This is circa 1905, this picture. Lengths of linen were sewn together and put through the calendaring, which was steam mangles, and they rolled over across steam cylinders to dry. They were then finished into these bundles of linen, which were sent to the beetling room. And this is this image is a beetling machine, circa 1915. It's a really alarming looking machine, but it was the end of the linen production process. And here the cloth was wrapped around these large, slowly revolving rollers, while wooden blocks or beetles pounded the cloth up to 400 blows a minute. This hammering created a fine glossy finish, bringing out its natural luster. The bluing process, incidentally, was where they added a blue dye because it enhanced the whiteness of the linen. And so this whole combination of finishing was what produced the very fine quality linen, which Northern Ireland is well known for. This hammering created, it tightened the weave on the linen and eliminated any small gaps. So they ended up with a really fine quality linen.
That's really great to see, and I've just put a link in the chat about the last beetling company in Ireland, and I always managed to get a spelling mistake in. And these beetling machines are quite incredible beasts, and the linen they create is so fine and so interesting to the industry that a couple of years ago, Alexander McQueen, the fashion house, actually recommissioned beetling of the linen in these machines. Gill, we're close to half an hour.
Okay, I'll just very quickly finish by saying that this is what the bleach green became. They introduced steam, and they had all of these machines with 15 beetling engines, and yeah, and they had. Yeah, well, that's it. It was a very large industry at the height of the linen trade. And to finish, I'll just say very briefly that the Irish linen industry peaked in the early 1900s, and by the early 1950s, competition from cheaper cotton imports and man-made fibres from the Far East reduced the demand for linen. The change in fashion styles and the increasing demand for lighter weight fabrics hastened the decline of the industry. Our family research is ongoing, and we continue to add to the knowledge of this extensive family. We've thoroughly enjoyed being part of the Let's Grow Flax project, growing, processing the flax and contextualising what is the foundation of a reborn cottage industry, in fact, in a sustainable and more environmentally friendly way. And I just want to congratulate Bridget on the accreditation of the Let's Grow Flax journey and the genes to the Fibershed UK. And so, yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Jill. There was so much information in there, and I will bug you about more in a private moment, because with all the research I'm doing, I don't have the time, and I'm so curious about many traditional things, many learnings. What can we learn as sustainable producers, and what should we unlearn? You said somewhere in the beginning of your presentation that at the moment you're mainly exploring the heritage of your family, but then you keep in parallel how this ties in with modern knowledge and how it's sometimes overtaken or validated. And these are such important explorations we have to do at the moment to understand. On the one hand, flax is an amazing local plant fiber with a fantastic potential for regenerative, the textile growing. Regenerative exceeds a sustainable standard by not just taking less than we need to actively recreating topsoil, a source that's equally fast disappearing compared to fossil oils and fuels.
Yes.
So that's also something we need to keep an eye on. On the other hand, on the darker side, how industrialization and science actually polluted islands, rivers and land to the degree that is still measurable today, and how the industry is now trying to find alternatives to very, very traditional ways like pond retting and so forth, in order to return to flax growing, but do it in a way that's actually beneficial to the soil, beneficial to the land, and beneficial to the people, because once industry came in, it was lowly paid and very risky. So we need to investigate all these sides, and that you have given us insights in all of these different aspects. It's really, really interesting. It's going back to the 11th century, fantastic resource, and how deep this history is re-emerging ourselves, but also so interesting to hear that it was woven by power looms, because one of the current industry arguments against linen is that it weaves slower compared to cotton. Also, general textile trends, as in, we know that medieval clothing was heavier because they had less heating in the house. Now that every house has central heating, the demand for lighter cloth has risen because we don't need to dress up so warmly anymore. So it's literally how the hard engineering of houses affects the soft engineering of cloth. So there's so many pointers which we could expand on. It was really, really interesting to hear all of those. And as we said, there's more to explore. Oh, and one thing I wanted to mention, of course, is where flax at the moment in its revival struggles with cotton is that cotton is subsidized and flax is not. Where in the old days, flax was subsidized by the governments in order to support the local industries. So that's another kind of struggle flax is facing at the moment in terms of growing and becoming more dominant, sustainable and even regenerative plant fiber. So these are the few things that came to my head. I don't know if anybody wants to unmute themselves now and talk a little bit about questions and inspirations they want to share listening to the talk. And Gill, thank you very much for the notion on the Let's Grow Flax. Yes, we were very, very proud that Southeast Fibershed has now put us on the list of Fibershed inspired projects. We strived very, very strongly to highlight the potential of local production, and all of you have helped to make this a success, and that's now been published on our local bioregional Fibershed site. So that's a great success. So thank you very much. I open the floor to questions, inspirations, and sharing any kind of comments.
Just quickly to say that I really enjoyed Jill's presentation. I think that photographs are just amazing. Yes. I just loved watching them. It was just so wonderful. And I think that like four of us coming with, from these different regions, we have brought so much richness to this sharing. Just amazing. Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you. And of course, what I picked up is the fact that the early cottage industry grown by farmers and everything was processed by hand is more akin to your family, what your families were doing. And it's not to be underestimated how awful the conditions must have been in the mills. And there's an awful lot to say about working conditions in the mills, but I haven't got time for that. But it was pretty awful, and the only sort of comfort I get is that as Quakers, they were very concerned about the welfare of their workers. Having said that, working in the actual mill, they weren't the people working in the mill, but employing the workers. So I think producing the flax by hand it is a wholly more satisfying sort of feeling, isn't it? Because you're working with the land and the flax itself, as opposed to this idea of the huge industry behind it, producing actually what was millions of yards of linen going out by the sort of early 1900s from Ireland. So I suppose you had to go to mechanization in order to fulfill that.
And I think mechanization is still an important aspect to go for, but the question in our days is, and I'm sorry, I'm always coming from a sustainable perspective because that is my drive. I think the mechanization is an important aspect to keep, because a lot of people say, oh, doing it by hand, you know, I don't want to live like my grannies. But so mechanization helps with that. The question is a lot more how we're integrating a modern technology like renewable energy sources and so forth, and good working conditions for the workers, and still keep some of the ethos as well, which we are connecting with Flax. So it's not a matter of either or. It's not either the industrialization as we had it 100 years ago, or processing by hand. It is, I think, a parallel movement of people in hand work, understanding and getting connected to the material again, so they know what they want from commercially produced material, both from the textile quality, as in that it's good linen, it's good flax, but also from understanding how hard the work is in processing it by hand and doing it themselves, what they want from the ethical conditions in mills and production facilities in order to buy not just sustainable but also ethically conscious clothes. I think approaching textiles by hand and going through the process gives us a lot of information of what we want from the textiles we're going to buy, and perhaps also support petitions that flax might be subsidized again. You also have talked about seed varieties, another very important aspect. At the moment, after Brexit, we're only allowed to import one variety, which we're all growing, which is avian. So there's so many different aspects we need to look at, both from a policy point of view and where we could be lobbying policies, as well as from personal domestic textile production view. But connecting to the material asks all these questions and hopefully gives us multiple points to investigate this in parallel.
Where does the seed come from, Bridget? Where is it imported from?
So we are getting it at the moment from Germany. I don't know where Simon gets it from. I think he works a lot with Holland. Yes, I'm not 100% sure where the different sources we have, but they're all, at the moment we only can import avian, because it's a lot of paperwork to be done to sort out import and export agreements, and flax is not at the top list of the politicians.
Of course, the import-exports and what the government were doing was also a big influencer, wasn't it? Or it is now, obviously.
It is, but also at the same time, it's really coming up. I was really, really pleased when I got the funding for the 2024 project, as in producing the jeans, paid for the collaboration with Fiber Mill, of course, me upping my spinning skill, and of course, having the jeans sewn. So all of these collaborations, that was actually a fund that was specifically for helping communities to go greener with all kind of aspects. And because growing flax helped with getting resilience skills, so producing your own schedules, getting well-being skills, because you got people out in the open and giving more exercise and so forth, and getting community skills, as in pooling up, getting together, getting to know each other, but also connecting textile communities with woodworkers, skills communities with maker skills, very, very modern, open access, maker labs, connecting all these different communities. So these are the 3 check boxes I checked with my funding. So the government really starts to support these community activities via funding, but it needs to kind of raise up a little bit higher and trickle down a little bit lower to hit a larger mass. But it has started. It has definitely started. And of course, as a little reminder, all of us and all of you are part of getting flax, nettle and hemp processing off the endangered red list of Heritage Crafts UK, to make it an issue to create awareness and make sure it's not becoming a forgotten and endangered craft any further from where it's classed at the moment. We have guests. Can I invite you to share some of your thoughts and some of your takeaways you're going to take away from what you've heard today? And if you don't want to do it on recording, a little bit later, we'll switch off the recording. We can do it then. But if any of you are okay to share thoughts or inspirations, it would be lovely to hear.
I just wanted to say thank you very much, everybody. That was super interesting. I don't have any flax growing heritage that I'm aware of, but one of the reasons I wanted to do it is because I love the fact that it's been grown all over the world for so long by all these different cultures. And it kind of connects me to our past and our heritage, and I just think it's just a all-round great activity to do, because like you said, Bridget, it gets you out in nature, and it gets people ask you questions about it, so it provokes conversations and connections. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, everybody. It was great.
Well, thank you very much for sharing this. And that is one of the most important routes we have at the moment. People just having a go, seeing if they can do it in their garden, and then reach out and either create awareness or find out more about it. That's a fantastic route into textiles, and from textiles into the community. So thank you for being an active part of that, Emery. And I can't wait to see some of your legs at some stage. I know you're not too far away, so hopefully at some stage.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yes. Amina, can I ask you what sparked your interest in joining us today?
Working. Oh, hi. Well, what brought me to... I've been growing flax a few times.
Oh, fantastic.
On and off a few years. Last time was last year. And the year before that as well, which was a good year. Last year was not such a good year. Well, I come from Sweden, and there's lots of history there with flax. Not so much that I know in my own family, but I haven't really researched it either. I haven't processed much flax, just a little bit, because I haven't really got the tools for it. So it's mostly, manually, by hand. I've done small bits, and I've spun a bit, and getting better at it.
Oh, that's great, and that's lovely to hear. Do you actually still speak Swedish?
Oh, yes, it's my first language.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so I just put in the chat, as I said, and I might not have put this on the recording. It was all started by one KVM Lin. So
yes.
So you might be able to dive into that community, and also this is a good mix for you to learn a little bit more about that part of the heritage and what these people do, and maybe even relay it to us, because I've just started to join the group. I have yet.
Yeah, I've been a member. I've been a member for a few years. That's probably how I got into it. No, wait, fantastic. I did try many years ago, because I had a memory from school where our textiles teacher had grown flax, and she'd showed us, and we had done some processing and spinning and weaving with it in school. So I wanted to try it in my garden. I didn't really have much knowledge, so I used just food flax. So, but it worked all right, but I didn't do much with it. But yeah, the en kvadratmeter lin, it's called in Swedish. That's the group. Yeah, I did join them, and I did grow flax. I've done growing flax since then. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! That's really lovely to hear that you actually a living connection between now being with us as Let's Grow Flax as a guest, and also create this connection to this square meter growing group in Sweden, which is a great inspiration for all of the European groups. I think they have about 6,000 members there. Yeah. And we're about 30, so we have to go a wee while. But there's so many flax groups now coming up, so hopefully we can reach out, and also hopefully we can join up a little bit forces with other UK groups. The whole movement can be a little bit more coordinated and also leverage from each other's learnings and so forth. So we are part of something larger, and we are part of something that is coming up and is not going away, but also...
That's lovely to hear. Lovely.
Thank you. And thank you for joining
Thank
today.
you.
I thank you all for joining today. I thank our presenters for sharing their stories and inspirations. It was just the tip of the iceberg. I have lots more questions. If you have too, please feel free to email. I have learned so much. It was so good to have this larger context and all the hard work we put over the last 2 years. Having culminated in the genes and now culminating and developing further into this community aspects and community conversations and bringing all these cultures together. It's just a phenomenal outcome I wouldn't have dreamt of when I thought I'm going to ask a couple of my ex-nettlers if they want to grow flax with me. I couldn't be more grateful. And you have all invested a lot of time and energy and effort. So thank you very much. And here is to a happy continuance. And I look forward to what we're going to get out of our 25 flags. The collaboration with the mill continues. Hopefully by the end of the year, we have some of our homegrown and mechanically spun linen yarn in our hands and have actually successfully created a small network of growers, garden growers and mechanical facilities to create a bioregional textile network akin with the cottage industries you've been talking about, Gill, but with the modern impact that helps us to make this feasible, fun, and bring it into the next generation. Thank you very much, everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Cheers. Bye. I'm waving. You can't see me. Imagine me waving. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
And
Bye.
you too. Thank you. Bye.